Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, I'll be moderating the debate concerning the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act was a law passed after the September 11th attacks in 2001 in New York. The Patriot Act has raised some concerns about civil liberties that we will be debating tonight. On one side, I have Mr. Toby Finch supporting the act.
Good evening, Mr. McGuire.
Good evening.
Hello, everyone.
On the other hand, I have Mr. Duke Rotmore opposing the act.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Rotmore.
Good evening, Mr. Rotmore.
Let's begin with opening statements. Mr. Finch, why do you support the Patriot Act?
Could go on forever. The Patriot Act provides crucial tools for detecting and preventing terrorism. It allows for expanded surveillance, including wiretaps and monitoring digital communications, which help uncover terrorist plots before they even materialize. The Act also improves interagency coordination, allowing law enforcement and intelligence agencies to share information more effectively. The proactive approach focuses on prevention, not reaction, which is essential in today's fast-changing security landscape. It has also facilitated better international cooperation, enabling cross-border investigations to disrupt global terrorist organizations.
The Act's effectiveness in disrupting over 50 terrorist plots has been noted. However, privacy concerns do remain. Mr. Rotmore, why do you oppose the Patriot Act?
Yes, thank you. While the intent may be to protect us, the Patriot Act undermines our civil liberties. It grants the government intrusive powers to monitor communications without adequate oversight or probable cause. For example, Section 215 allows the collection of business records without links to criminal activity, potentially sweeping up data on innocent people. This mass surveillance is a direct violation of our privacy rights and the Fourth Amendment. Vague definitions of terrorist activity also leave the door open for overreach and misuse.
Mr. Finch, how do you respond to these concerns?
Mr. Rotmore, I understand the concerns, but the Patriot Act includes safeguards such as judicial oversight to protect that privacy you are talking about. Surveillance is only allowed under specific conditions, and these powers are essential for responding to new threats in the digital age. While no law is perfect, as we all know, the tools provided by the Act are necessary to combat evolving terrorism tactics. Oversight ensures accountability, and without these tools, we would be less prepared to prevent attacks.
That's a very good point. Critics do argue that the safeguards aren't enough. A 2013 report raised concerns about transparency. Mr. Rotmore, do you believe the oversight is sufficient?
No, I do not. The oversight is weak. Many of the Act's provisions operate in secret, like the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, which issues warrants without public scrutiny. This lack of transparency makes it hard to hold the government accountable. People who are monitored often have no idea their rights are being violated and cannot challenge their surveillance. Furthermore, the Patriot Act allows gag orders, which prevent individuals from even discussing surveillance they've been subjected to, further reducing accountability.
Mr. Finch, how do you address the concerns about secrecy?
While secrecy may seem concerning to the naked eye, it's often necessary to protect national security. Many intelligence operations require confidentiality to be effective. However, the Act still includes checks, such as the requirement for judicial review, to ensure it's not being abused. It's about striking a balance between security and privacy. The goal is to stop attacks before they happen, which is critical in today's world.
Mr. Rotmore, some argue the Act's surveillance tools have been misused beyond their intended purpose, such as targeting marginalized groups. How do you respond to this?
I'll tell you, the Patriot Act has led to targeting of innocent people, particularly Muslim Americans, political activists, and minority communities. Surveillance has been used against these groups under the guise of counterterrorism, which is deeply troubling. What's worse, though, is these powers are being repurposed for unrelated investigations, like drug cases or tax fraud, and this expansion goes beyond the original intent of the Act and opens the door for unnecessary surveillance of everyday citizens.
I disagree with that.
Mr. Finch, what's your response to these claims of overreach?
I acknowledge that overreach is a concern, but the tools in the Patriot Act are essential for identifying and preventing terrorist threats. The surveillance is targeted at suspected threats, not at innocent civilians. While abuses can happen, and we all understand that, we need these capabilities to stay ahead of modern terrorist organizations across the world. The focus remains on preventing terrorism, not curbing civil liberties. We can't afford to ignore potential threats.
Well, I would agree that we cannot afford to ignore potential threats. Critics do argue that the mass collection of your data under the Act has not been effective preventing terrorism. What's your response to this, Mr. Finch?
I mean, the volume of data collected can seem overwhelming, but intelligence agencies are continuously improving their ability to analyze and process this information. The Act's tools allow us to uncover potential threats before they materialize. Yes, there are challenges in managing large amounts of data, but the ability to monitor digital communications is essential in today's digital age. We can't ignore modern technology in our efforts to combat terrorism.
Mr. Robmore, you argue the Act has not significantly protected terrorism yet. Why is that?
Well, yeah, the Act has not at all prevented major terrorist attacks. Many of the plots cited by the government were result of sting operations, not intelligent gathering. The focus on mass data collection often leads to a flood of information that is difficult to manage, making it easier for real threats to slip through the cracks. Traditional methods like targeted surveillance with judicial oversight could be just as effective without infringing on civil liberties.
Mr. Finch, why do you think the Patriot Act has been effective in preventing terrorism in the United States?
I mean, absolutely. The Patriot Act has played a key role in disrupting numerous terrorist plots. Like mentioned earlier, you said 50, but there has been more. It's not about collecting data for the sake of it. It's about identifying patterns that can point to those potential threats. While traditional methods worked in the past, the modern threat landscape requires modern tools to be used. We need to be proactive, and the Patriot Act gives us the tools to do that effectively.
Sir Robmore, what traditional methods would be enough to protect us from terrorism?
Yes, traditional methods like targeted surveillance with proper judicial oversight were effective before the Patriot Act could be effective today.
Hold on 1 second. Effective? You mean effective as like happened after the attacks on September 11th?
Let me continue, sir. The problem is that the Patriot Act allows for mass surveillance of the general population, not just suspected terrorists. We don't need blanket surveillance to stop terrorism. The Act has expanded its reach into areas like drug enforcement and other unrelated crimes, and this is where the real problem lies.
Mr. Robmore, that is a very good point that you brought up.
Thank you, sir.
In closing, Mr. Finch, what is your final statement concerning the Patriot Act?
Yeah. Patriot Act has been a critical tool in preventing terrorist attacks and saving people's lives. It provides necessary surveillance capabilities, and the safeguards in place help ensure that it's used responsibly. Without it, we'd be left vulnerable to future attacks, such as the ones on September 11th.
Mr. Robmore?
Yes, the Patriot Act has gone too far. It's getting in the way of our civil liberties. It has led to mass surveillance and targeting of innocent people. While preventing terrorism is important, we can't sacrifice our freedoms in the process. We need reforms that prioritize security without infringing on our constitutional rights.
I understand that. I do.
Thank you both for your perspectives on this
Thank you,
Patriot
sir.
Act. I thoroughly enjoyed this interaction.
Me as well.
This debate highlights ongoing tensions between security and civil liberties in the United States. The question remains, can we protect our nation without preserving our freedoms? Good night, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. McGuire.
Mr. Finch?
Have a good rest of your night.
You as well, sir.